And just like that, last night, the Sex and the City revival series came to an end. So, in the immortal words of Carrie Bradshaw, I couldn't help but wonder, after more than 25 years, is it finally time to say goodbye to Carrie, Charlotte, Samantha, and Miranda? I'm Ali Hassan, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Joining me today on the group chat to talk it all out are Auntie Donahue, Chris Murphy, and Amil Niazi. And for listeners who didn't watch the finale last night, consider yourself warned. There will be spoilers. Welcome to Commotion, everyone.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Okay, we're starting. We're all here. We're starting with your reactions to that finale, and a final warning: there are going to be spoilers. You are hearing them right now, this moment.
I may be alone for the rest of my life.
What? No! There will be a new man in your life.
I have to quit thinking maybe a man and start accepting maybe just me.
You are so fabulous.
Oh, well, that was never in question.
Chris, you've done a lot of reporting, some fabulous reporting for Vanity Fair about And Just Like That. Tell me, what did you make of the ending?
Wow, that is such a complicated question.
Yeah.
Because obviously there are things about the episode that didn't work and that are, some might say, not good. And that
some might describe the entire series that way, but
some
still loved it. Yes.
But still loved it. You could maybe count me as one of those people. But I would not have sent off Carrie in this way, but I do think ending Carrie's story with her being single and fabulous, a little callback to Sex and the City, which we just heard Charlotte say, I do think that's spiritually right. I do think we want and we need Carrie to stand in her truth and be single and self-assured and fulfilled and content with herself. And that is actually sort of like the spirit of the show. Did I need to see Victor Garber plunge in a toilet for 2 minutes in the last 5 minutes of Carrie Bradshaw's arc on television? No, but I am happy that Sarah Jessica Parker and Carrie ended up alone. So it was a mix of emotions, I would say.
Yeah, that toilet scene is going to stay with people for quite some time. And you have said that you love the ending of the original Sex and the City series. Is this goodbye from last night the one that the Sex and the City universe deserved?
I mean, if we asked for this, did we deserve? No, I don't. I think the toilet scene was a really good metaphor for, I think, what we just witnessed over the last 3 seasons. It's super disappointing. The entire thing that happened. It's disappointing that it happened. It's disappointing that it kept going, and it's disappointing that this is the way that it ended. I, as a 90s stan of the Sex and the City franchise, I think the first series ended so well, and the first one wasn't that bad. That would have also been okay. And now it's like watching your Sims go completely awry, and you're like, they're dancing and they're letting in people, and it's crazy. And I think we're all mourning today. We're in a bit of a mourning stage.
All right. Amil, let me ask you, did it feel like it was time to say goodbye to Carrie Bradshaw in your mind?
Yes, I do think it was time to say goodbye to Carrie Bradshaw. Although, I was kind of moved by the final scene of her in this amazing house that she chose for herself. And I loved when she asked for the garden to be wild and free. It's funny, I was just talking to my husband right before I was watching that scene, and we're talking about our garden. And I was like, I just want it to be wild. And you know what I mean? It's like, I love the idea of a woman choosing herself and choosing to stay in her power and allowing herself to look inward rather than outward for validation.
I don't want to be contrarian, Amil, for the sake of contrarianism, but she did choose that house because she was going to wind up with Aiden for the rest of her life, and then he dumped her, and now she was kind of stuck with that house.
That is not an Aiden house. That is a Carrie house.
Aiden never belonged there.
Aiden did never fit in there.
Aiden didn't fit in at all.
KFC eating monster, he did not. That was not an Aiden house, Ali. I'm sorry to say, but that house was a Carrie house.
I needed to hear this. Prior to the finale, season 3 as a whole had been getting mixed reviews. Chris, we suggested this. Tell me, what were some of the most talked about moments from this season?
Well, I mean, I would have to shout out Lisa Todd Wexley's father dying twice over the course of the season. So there were continuity errors. And I think, Miranda sort of landing on her feet. This is the first post Che Diaz season. So we're in a post Che Diaz world. Miranda's non-binary comedian paramour, played by Sarah Ramirez, left the show kind of in a dramatic fashion at the end of season 2. So I think we're finding our footing there. And it was just it's a tonally weird and inconsistent series and show with not a lot of like breakout moments, but with a lot of like, what? Rosie O'Donnell singing Because I Knew You in Times Square. I think that also was one of the most buzzed about moments. It's hard to sort of make heads or tails of it all. But, many of us, and I'll say myself included, would have watched a million hours of it. A million hours just because we
Just
love those
'cause.
girls.
And the word hate watch comes up a lot when we talk about this series. For many people, you're a fan of the original. Did you get anything out of this revival series in the end? I think you did. You said you're in mourning.
I mean, we're all in mourning perpetually in 2025, I think. But I think in this case, I mean, I want to say, like, I want to mirror what Chris said. We could watch like a million hours of this series. We could watch a billion hours of the girls. But at the same time, I think it felt like it felt flat. It felt like playing like paper doll versions of the people that we had been watching. Like when you're little and you're playing Barbies and you're like, here's Joe and Bill from Twister and they're like on an adventure. I had like one friend and that's probably why, but like it felt very like fan servicey without actually consulting any of the fans. It felt very surface level. It felt very, it just felt very unfinished. And I think that makes the legacy really difficult to square.
Right. Yeah. So, Amil, let me talk to you about, the original series was groundbreaking, the way it talked about womanhood, being single, casual sex. It was a pioneering show in that way. Did And Just Like That make any similar stories, any similar strides for the way we look at middle-aged women and aging as it's portrayed on screen?
I think so. I think it's still so rare to see women over the age of 40, having sex, talking about their bodies, talking about dating, talking about what it's like to be a widow, talking about what it's like to have a life after divorce or to change your sexuality. I think still in 2025, it's very rare to see women age on screen. And so I think in that respect, it did make some strides, and it did show people that, you don't just fall off a cliff at 35 and then decide to just hide in your house forever. Like, these women are out there, they're living their lives, they're being bold. They may be ridiculous, but at least we're getting to watch them do it.
Chris, Sex and the City, the original, was infamously got a lot of criticism for portraying this sort of whitewashed version of New York City. And Just Like That made an obvious effort to address that. Some of the roles you mentioned with Sarah Martinez, Che Diaz, and Lisa and Seema and Rock. You have women of color in leading roles there. And in supporting roles, you have people from different groups, non-white groups. How successful were those attempts in your mind to make the show more inclusive?
I mean, it definitely was clunky at first. I mean, it definitely felt like, okay, we need to right an ancient wrong here. It was an extremely white show, and a lot of the storylines from Sex and the City, with Blair Underwood and other, were kind of, didn't age well. As many things from the 90s, it's not, a knock necessarily on Sex and the City, but more the culture. But I do think I would say that over the course of the 3 seasons, the show got a lot better at integrating, for lack of a better word, Seema and Lisa Todd Wexley, the 2 women of color, played by Nicole Ari Parker and Sarita Chowdhury, and they started to feel more fleshed out because the elephant in the room is they were brought on to replace Kim Cattrall, who played Samantha, who did not return for And Just Like That. So they already had sort of a really hard role and a really tall order to fill in terms of, stepping in their own ways for this iconic character that everybody loved. That some would say it was the reason Sex and the City was great and sort of worked in the first place. And I do think it was a rough road at the beginning, sort of figuring out how do they interact and how do they mesh with the core group because they weren't there. But I do think by the end, they found a rhythm in a way to more naturally involve them and mesh them in the lives of our central three characters, but they were always playing at a deficit because they weren't in Sex and the City. So I do think it was necessary, and I am glad that they tried. And I think that is actually one of the very few success stories that we can say about it. And just like that, is by the end they kind of figured out a natural way to make them a part of the group.
That's interesting. For me, I've loved Sarita Chaudhary since a movie called Mississippi Masala many years ago. So I didn't see her as a deficit. I'm like, oh, everybody benefits. We got Sarita Chaudhary in the house. Amil, tell me about this this idea of the show also this series trying to be less heteronormative. Miranda comes out as a lesbian. Charlotte's daughter dabbles in polyamory. We meet, the Che Diazes of the world and Rock, non-binary characters. How well do you think the creators modernized the show's approach to gender and sexuality?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting one because the original show was so straight and so white, and you really didn't ever explore the spectrum of sexuality, and they used to scoff at anal sex or oral sex, and they're actually a very conservative show for something called Sex and the City. But I think in this new series, they really did try and blow that up and explore new things. It always feel natural and appropriate, and I think honoring all those different sort of ways of existing? No. But I do think, again, with the aging thing, the fact that it was there and they were exploring it and they were trying to do it in a way that was very positive and celebratory is still a good thing because we don't, again, see a lot of that on TV still.
Right. It's been 27 years. It does feel like we're not just saying goodbye to this series, but we're saying goodbye to the Sex and the City universe. Although I told my wife yesterday what we were going to talk about, and she goes, "We're not saying goodbye for sure. Carrie Bradshaw's coming back as a golden girl one day. She's convinced that it's not over." But putting her sort of hatred aside, I want to get nostalgic for a second, and maybe each of you can tell me one of your favorite moments from the original Sex and the City. And let's start with you.
I think the some women aren't meant to be tamed. They need to be. Oh my God! Of course, I forgot the quote. But I like to think of her as it's not so much one moment as the fact that she was one of television's best anti-heroes. And we don't really put her in the same category as Walter White or Don Draper. But this woman was all id all the time. There was absolutely no, the self-awareness was totally skewed to match her ego. If she were written into Breaking Bad, we would be heralding her as the second coming. I think when we think of Carrie Bradshaw, we have to give her credit as the precursor to Tony Soprano, also because Sex and the City did save HBO. So you have to put her in that lineage of the worst best characters or the best worst characters.
All right. Chris, what about you? That's well said. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I so agree. I love Carrie. And people online were saying, she's up there in the pantheon of literary characters with Odysseus and Jesus. And I do think that is true.
Yeah.
I agree with that sentiment 100%.
Poor Homer turning in his grave right now.
He should be so lucky to be in the same breath as Carrie Bradshaw, I will say. It's hard to pin down one moment. It's actually what I keep coming back to is the memes of it all, that she's become such an enduring cultural figure online. The meme of her, showing up at Big's door in a top hat with a cane and being sort of like a universal symbol for being down bad. Or when Carrie Bradshaw, Sarah Jessica Parker, sort of shrugs with her curly hair and looks sad, that's another, and is disappointed. That's another meme. It's just her sitting at the computer typing. I couldn't help but wonder. She is such a cultural touchstone, and it's there's a universalness about her, even though, yeah, Anna's totally right. She's an anti-hero. She's selfish. She's not really a great friend. She's pretty prude. She's kind of backwards in many ways. There's a lot of flaws. And yet I think a lot of us see ourselves in her. And that will never go away, even if, and just like that didn't exactly deliver on the promise of Carrie Bradshaw all the time.
Amil, a favorite moment or episode that sticks out for you?
Yes, I sort of discovered Sex in the City when I was like 20, slightly post its airing. And I remember being single and feeling wild and free. And there's an episode where Carrie Bradshaw sort of is taken out of her usual milieu, and she meets this skateboarder, and it's a very hot summer in New York City. He has air conditioning, so they go to his house, they smoke weed, they hang out, they have the best time. And she just like wasn't wearing designer outfits. She was just like in a tank top and little shorts, and they were eating chicken and being high. And I just was like, this is what it means to be a single woman who is enjoying her life and feeling good. And the episode ends with her discovering that it's not his apartment, it's his mother's, and he lives at home, and he's a bit of a loser. She ends up taking his pot and his chicken and walking home, and Hot Child in the City is playing. Yes! And she looks glorious. Oh, and she takes the weed home to her friends, and they all get high. And it's just like, yes, womanhood, singledom, just life in the city, and it just stays with me, and I go back to it often. I just think it completely exemplifies why women loved this show.
I love that episode. Oh my God.
Yeah, well, Emil, the way you took Chris and Anne down a memory lane there, how they were nodding and smiling as you referenced that episode, that was amazing. And so it's very clear from everything you've said, and you said it very well, that she has been upheld as one of the greatest TV characters of all time. Sarah Jessica Parker shared this very sweet tribute to her after the show was canceled. Here's a bit of it in her own words.
She devoted herself to hats, books, shoes, friends, and the promise of a new day in her beloved city. Carrie Bradshaw has dominated my professional heartbeat for 27 years. I think I have loved her most of all.
And if this was Carrie's funeral, and I suppose it is for many, how do you think we should remember her?
I mean, you asked about hate watching earlier, and I think in addition to the anti-hero-ness of it all, I think if anything, we bonded as a community watching and just like that, and watching Sex in the City. And even if we couldn't agree on who she should have ended up with, Big versus Aiden, etc., she banded us together to over-romanticize this idea of womanhood in New York and existence in New York and singlehood in New York. And if anything, she helped establish a sense of community, because even though I watched this last part of the show and cringed constantly and was like, what have they done? I hate it. I am so sad I will not have access to memes, to recaps, to my friends' opinions about it. I could have watched this forever, like Survivor. It should have 47 seasons. I'm sad that it's over.
Yeah. I mean, Chris, I know you share that. You've said you'd watch them, fold laundry if you could for hours. The franchise has obviously had a massive impact on pop culture and has generations of fans. I want to ask you, just as we close this discussion, where do you see its legacy showing up in culture today?
That's a great question. I mean, I think it is woven into the fabric of television. It is one of the most iconic television shows and franchises for everything. And Emil have said in terms of its, unabashed, bold depiction of female sexuality in the 30s. I'm talking about Sex in the City, by the way. I'm not talking about it just like that. Let me be very clear. Let me be very clear. But I do think that these women, and we've been talking a lot about Carrie because this does feel like the end of it's Carrie's show. She's the protagonist and whatnot. But we have to talk about Miranda and Charlotte and Samantha. All four of these women, these central characters, really changed the television landscape and were so indelible. And, for the rest of time, at least my lifetime, I will sit around with my friends and we'll discuss who's a Miranda, who's a Carrie, who's a Charlotte, who's a Samantha. That is how amazing these characters are. And that's why I think it is, while it's hard to say goodbye and just like that didn't actually, deliver necessarily on the promise that we may have thought, and maybe we never even wanted it in the first place. Maybe we didn't deserve it, but it was nice to spend time with, three of these women and see them into their twilight years. And I think it was, the series was always meant to be a little bit of a reality check and not the fantasy of, Sex in the City in your 30s and whatnot. It's a different time. It's a different show. I interviewed Sarah Jessica Parker and Michael Patrick King for the finale, and they were both lovely and wonderful, but they're like, yeah, it was always a different show. It was never going to be Sex in the City. And I think that is something that we all have to reckon with.
I'm Ali Hassan, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. I've got Amil Niazi, Chris Murphy, and Auntie Donahue with me. We cannot wrap up this week without talking about some news from Taylor Swift. Every time I'm on this show, it feels like there's some Taylor Swift news, and it feels like a small betrayal to Elamin that I get to talk about Taylor when I know he would love to be here doing this. But here, let's talk about this news.
This is my brand new album.
We got TS12, baby.
This is my brand new album. It's called The Life of a Showgirl.
That's Taylor Swift on New Heights, which is a football podcast hosted by her boyfriend, Travis Kelce, and his brother, Jason. She's announcing her new album, which will be out on October 3rd on a football podcast because, of course. Emil, what was your reaction to that when you heard that news?
Well, here's the thing. I've never been a Swiftie. I for the longest time, I was.
That's
like,
all the time we have for you, Emil. I couldn't. I'm definitely not a Swiftie. I couldn't name a
song. I couldn't. I really like. It was like it's music I hear in Starbucks. But I have a daughter. She loves Taylor Swift, like deep, deep, deep in her soul. And so over time, she has worn me down. And now I am so excited for her to get to hear some new Taylor Swift songs, for us to have some new stuff in the rotation on Alexa. And so I've been a little converted, and I think it's great news for my household
this is
and the rest of the world.
This is a weird matchmaking that I'm doing here, but if you could get Elamin to babysit your daughter one day, I think it would be just a great pairing. I think that's something to think about. Chris, you feel somewhat similarly. What's your take on the rollout?
I will say I was a fan, like a normal, regular, not stan, but fan in high school and whatnot. Some great songs. She's definitely, part of the monoculture. She can write a song, but I think my issue, and I think this album is emblematic of that, is when you produce so much and you're just churning out content, at some point the quality is gonna fall, and it's gonna get worse. And I do think if you look at the last album, which I thought was bad, and basically most of the output that she's put out since Folklore, I would say, it becomes slop and mush and nothing. And you might have one or two good songs there, but also I think it's going to be 22 songs. I think it's 10 songs on the album, and then 12 songs on the album, and then a deluxe track of 10 songs. That's too much. I think as Michaela Cole said, sometimes it's good to disappear and to go away and not be front facing, and to think about your art and to feed that, rather than just like produce stuff just to produce stuff to make money and to fill your pocketbook. So I'm not super bummed about the new album. It
feels very capitalistic, right? It's just like she's just come off this massive tour that changed, the face of touring, but it was so expensive. And during this tour, she's churning out merch, and people are buying that. And they're spending their money, and they're buying different versions of things that already exist. And then at the same time, she is like panic mode, producing more and more and more. And it almost feels like it's like the spectrum of Rihanna never doing music, and then Taylor Swift just making too much music. And we got to find a place in the middle for artists.
Yes.
30 seconds left. Auntie Donahue, your thoughts.
I feel like I was really white knuckling to the end of eras where I'm like, we're going to get a break. It's going to be amazing. And now we have found out at mile 100 that there's still 5 more kilometers and/or miles to go in this marathon. I think we're all a little fatigued. I think we all need a little bit of a break. And in the immortal words of Hamilton, let's sing, take a break at her. Maybe leave us wanting more, not wanting to leave.
I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all. Amil Niazi is a columnist at The Cut, based in Toronto. Auntie Donahue is an author and writer, joining us from Cambridge, Ontario. Chris Murphy is a writer for Vanity Fair. He is in New York. That is it for the show. Thank you very much. My name is Ali Hassan. I'm filling in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. I was here all week. I've loved it. It's been great. I'll see you again real soon.